Thank you very much for everyone that's on this call. Forgive my big head and my ugly face, but I'm in Virginia Beach at a coffee shop. I am 100 feet from the water, which is awesome, except that it's raining and misty and cloudy. But thank you very much for joining We Are Connect Ed, the Bethesda chapter. We are in the October session today, and we have a wonderful speaker. But before I even get into any of that, I wanted to introduce Carla Villalobos, who is our Microsoft representative, at least for 2020. I heard some bad news about 2021, but she's got her peeps on the call. Carla, what do you have to say this morning?
Guys, thank you guys so much for joining us again. And so I am a community development specialist, at least until the end of this year. And my job is to connect organizations, nonprofits, to Microsoft so that Microsoft can get engaged with them, whether it's through our services, our training, or our workshops or volunteering. So, which is why we're here now. So back to you, Garland.
Awesome. So for those that are joining us for the first time, We Are Connect Ed was started by the ugly gentleman with the gray and black beard with the glasses on. Just found out he's going to be a 5-time grandfather here in a few weeks. Congratulations, Ed. I'm sorry, 4-time. Congratulations, Ed Dudley. But Ed started this organization over 2 years ago down in Raleigh. It was just a collaboration of people getting together to make us all better. And it's really morphed into something that's really pretty special. We're in, I think, 6 or 7 cities now, New Orleans, Miami, finally got to Maryland. And so with that, I wanted to introduce a person that I've known for a long time in a lot of different capacities, Grier Rubeling. She's nervous up there. So the pretty brunette that's up there waving at you used to be in Maryland. And I used to see her routinely at UBS, and I drag her down to the Capitol Grill and make her drink wine with me. And we probably overindulged a little bit on a few nights. And then she grew up all of a sudden. She got married and she moved to Raleigh, North Carolina, and she started having babies. And guess what? She started her own firm, and it's been quite an adventure. And lo and behold, we've been able to come back after all these years to collaborate. So I'm going to mess this up still, even though I asked you this earlier, Grier. Advisor Transition
Services.
There we go. Her business is helping advisors to grow, helping them to move. She's got a whole tutorial on how advisors go from going from a wirehouse broker to really forming their own independent RIA. It's a wonderful thing that the industry is moving in that direction regardless. But that's not why she's here. She's going to talk about all of the pains that she had developing a business, all the things she went through in forming a business. We all talk about what we want to be entrepreneurs, business owners, and then we get there and we don't really have a clue as to what we're doing. And we're like, wait a minute, what about a website? Wait a minute, what about marketing? Wait a minute, what about sponsorship? Wait a minute, all these things creep into. So for all those that are on the call, and for all those that are going to listen to the recorded call, if you are like me and Ed and Carla actually, and you have a side hustle, and you're trying to figure out how to incorporate yourself, what makes more sense, being a sole practitioner or LLC, if you're thinking about all the things that we can make money for ourselves and not just work for the big companies, Grier's going to teach us a little something today about the things we should be looking out for, the pitfalls, and also some of the accomplishments she's had over the last 2 years. So with that, I'm going to shut my mouth, and I'll let Grier do her thing. Go for it.
Okay, let me see if I can remember how to put my presentation up. I know we did this yesterday. Where's the little button? All right, let's see. All right, well, I can't figure out where the little button is when there's so many people on here. So I'm just gonna, oh wait, here we go, share.
What might be at the top?
Okay.
You got it.
Here we go. So I'm going to introduction of myself, although Garland did a really good job of that. I am Grier Rubeling, and I am a business owner. My consulting firm that I started about 3 years ago is called Advisor Transition Services. I help advisors start their own firms and transition client books of business. I am also the owner and sole contributor of a do-it-yourself blog that is called The Craft Crib. It's actually quite a popular one on Pinterest, and I do lots of do-it-yourself tutorials, mostly gingerbread and Halloween decorations, which are my favorite things to do, but I have a bunch of furniture makeovers and woodworking and crafts as well. And I live in Cary, North Carolina, right outside of Raleigh, with my husband and my 2 little girls who are 3 and 4. And today I am going to talk about overcoming imposter syndrome. This subject really hits home with me. I experience imposter syndrome on a regular basis still, but I do feel like I manage it much better now than I did 3 years ago when I started my business. So I do feel somewhat qualified to talk to you about it, even though when Garland originally reached out to me, it took me a few days to get over my imposter syndrome that was talking to others about imposter syndrome. So I'm going to start with my slides that I created, which if you've never used Canva before, I did this all in Canva, and I'm presenting right in Canva, which is really cool. So if you're looking to start a business, I highly recommend Canva. So what is imposter syndrome? I'm pretty sure everybody kind of knows what imposter syndrome is, but I did kind of look up a definition so that I could give it a name. And I found that it is a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their skills, talents, or accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. And I found this stat which kind of blew my mind, that an estimated 70% of people experience these feelings at some point in their lives. And when I read that, it opened a bunch of doors for me. I felt so much better about myself. Knowing that the majority of people go through these same feelings that I did, it just made me feel like those feelings were a little less significant, a little easier to overcome, that if others are experiencing what I'm experiencing, then it's really not that big of a deal. So imposter syndrome for me is kind of triggered by the perceived confidence and experience of others, which no doubt these days is exacerbated by social media. You're pelted every single day with these experts on social media, and it can make you often feel like you are less of one, even if you are just as qualified or more so than the people that are putting themselves out there and presenting themselves as experts. I mean, let's think about social media influencers. They must suffer from imposter syndrome on a regular basis. There's like these 15-year-old kids on TikTok who are making millions and millions of dollars a year, and what can they possibly have to say at 15 that warrants millions of people listening to them? The anxiety level that they experience, it just must be really scary. I think about what it would be like if I had millions of people looking at me and seeing what I'm doing on a daily basis when I was 15 years old, when I was in high school, and it's a scary thing. And or maybe they're just in that 30% and they just don't experience those feelings. But social media has caused a bit of a firestorm over the years, and I think it really feeds into that imposter syndrome a little bit. So I do want to talk about where my real feelings of imposter syndrome started, and that was 3 years ago when I started my business. I had, like Garland said, I had always been a support employee. I had always worked for the man, and I was in customer service and operations. So I didn't have any experience managing people or being a boss, let alone being in charge of everything from start to finish. Everything that Garland mentioned, a website, branding, all of this stuff that I had to learn for the first time on my own, even though I have a degree in marketing. I spent an entire decade being told what to do. So it was a very big change for me, and it changed when I started having kids. The birth of my first daughter was what made me realize that there were more important things in life than having a job and sitting behind a desk for 8 hours a day and working for the man. And the birth of my second daughter, 20 months later, list. I woke up one day and I was thinking to myself, well, what happens when my kids are old enough to talk and they ask me what I do for a living? And I thought about it and I said, well, I just really don't like the answer that I'm going to have to give them. And I'm trying to raise these strong, independent little girls that are going to turn into women. And I want them to truly believe that they can do whatever they want and be whatever they want. And I was not being a clear representation of that. So that's when I quit my job and I started my own consulting firm. I really didn't have much of it planned, but I knew deep down that I had the experience and the knowledge to help others. But the imposter syndrome was fierce. I kept thinking, what business do I have being the owner of a company and now networking with executives and other business owners when all I'd ever been was a support person? So talking to CEOs was me getting their coffee orders or giving them directions to the bathroom, but now they're reaching out to me all because I created a website on Wix. I started calling myself an owner on LinkedIn, and suddenly I am a president and CEO of a company. It might just be me, and it might just be one person, but I am the owner. And so people started treating me differently just because I called myself something else and I was in charge of what it was that I was doing. Side note, if you're looking to get a promotion ever, or if you are, just go ahead and start your own company and change your status on LinkedIn, and all of a sudden recruiters are just gonna like come at you. So I did have a lot of recruiters reach out to me about upper level positions after I started my company, but I knew that I wanted to really have the flexibility to stick it out and kind of see what I could do myself. And so in the beginning, I felt like a lot of my conversations that I was having with others were very high level. I was very nervous. I was doing a lot of listening, very little talking. I wasn't always sure what to say because I didn't want to say the wrong thing. I had a good niche and it resonated with my target market. So the thing that I was doing, this helping advisors transition books of business, not a lot of people were doing that, and I couldn't really find too many others. And so when I told my story, people really, they were really interested in what it was that I was doing. So all of my business was coming from referrals. And the more and more I talked to people, which in the beginning I would talk to anyone, and I still really will. My brand story has developed over time and gotten so much easier to tell, and now I feel so much more comfortable with it that when I'm talking on the phone, regardless of who it is, and telling people about what I do, it's almost automatic. I don't have to prepare for my calls anymore. I just talk, and I exude that confidence because I've just done it so many times. So within 6 months of starting my business, I was then starting to reach out to CEOs myself, and I was having actual conversations with them, and it was really going well. I started to feel more on that level, and the imposter syndrome was starting to go away. It just needed time and experience. And some of the people that I was talking to were like people that I had been speaking with when I sat behind that reception desk in my prior job, asking them if they took cream and sugar in their coffee. So, and like most of them didn't even know I was the same person. So it was really invigorating to me to have those experiences. But every so often I would have a conversation that would set me back. And so there were highs and really low lows. And sometimes it would be a matter of someone talking down to me or someone arguing with me over my hourly rate. Things that really made a young female in a very male-dominated industry feel almost inferior. And so what I did was I started reaching out to some female mentors and colleagues to share my experiences with. And that was a game changer for me. I also took to Pinterest and the library to help find encouraging and helpful resources, and that's when I started to adopt a process that I am going to share with you now. So our next slide, I'm going to start with my 8-step process for how to deal with imposter syndrome. So step one is the first step in any self-improvement program, which is acknowledge that you have a problem. So we're going to acknowledge that we have this imposter syndrome and these feelings. We're going to address those feelings head on and make a plan to actively work through those feelings. So my plan, like I said before, was get some mentors and other individuals in similar situations and talk through the issues. Having other women or men who'd been navigating the industry longer than me was extremely helpful. I was able to ask questions, vent my frustrations, talk about different solutions, and then the second part of my plan was finding educational materials. So I listened to a lot of podcasts and books, and I read a lot of articles, and I look for a lot of motivational quotes. I actually spend a few hours every quarter pulling my favorite motivational quotes and scheduling Motivation Monday social media posts on LinkedIn, which I think I've got a lot of people who have reached out to me and said that they appreciate those. You never know who you're going to affect on a certain day. It might be somebody going through something and they read the quote that you put on social media, and all of a sudden their day just changes a little bit because they realize, well, there's other people out there that are struggling, but we can all kind of help each other. So the more we understand what our imposter syndrome is, the easier it is to avoid those feelings. And so step two is quit making excuses. And this is a really crucial one. You want to be able to outline your achieved successes and explain to yourself how you actively achieved those successes. You have had successes, whether you are a business owner or whether you're thinking about it, your side hustle, whatever it is, you know what your successes are. You just need to be honest and credit yourself with those successes. Accept the evidence that is right in front of you. It's not really about convincing others that you are the best at what you do. It's about convincing yourself that your contributions are worthy. And if you can convince yourself that you're doing what you should be doing, then you can convince anyone. It will come out in your performance and in your confidence and in your stories and in your brand telling. So with that, I'm going to tell a little story of my own. So I want to talk about how I ended up on the Food Network with little to no baking and cooking experience. And obviously, this isn't really a business-related story, but I guess it kind of could be. I consider myself a bit of an artist. It took me a while to figure that out. There was a little bit of imposter syndrome involved with that part of my life. But a few years ago, I started making gingerbread houses, and I was just kind of following a recipe that I found on Pinterest and looking up ideas, and I decided that I was going to enter a local Raleigh competition. And anybody who truly knows me will tell you that I am an extremely competitive person. So I really went for it, really created something that I thought was really cool and that people would like, and I won first place. And when they stepped up on the stage in downtown Raleigh in front of a bunch of people to announce the winners and they called my name, the feeling was really cool, and I was totally hooked on gingerbread from there. So I started competing in some more local contests, and I won a few, and so then I kind of set my sights on something bigger, and I wanted to find a bigger contest, something where there were more artists that were competing. And I found the National Gingerbread House Competition, which is in Asheville, North Carolina, and that's about 3.5 hours from me. And I competed for the first time in 2018, and I didn't know what to expect, so I actually went on Facebook and I stalked the winner from the year before because she lived in my town, and I asked her a bunch of questions so that I could prepare myself for the experience. And so I had zero expectations of going into a competition so large and so popular and winning anything, but I did want to give myself a chance. I am a competitive person, so I wanted to make sure that I had at least something that I could be proud of. And so I worked on my entry for 4 or 5 months, which sounds like a lot, but gingerbread is It's an exhausting and long process, and I ended up submitting my entry called Reindeer Playing Poker, and I had all these little gingerbread and modeling chocolate reindeer, and they were sitting around a gingerbread table in these like fancy gingerbread chairs, and they were sipping little gum paste Moscow mules and smoking wafer paper cigars, and I was super excited. I looked at it and I was really proud of what I had created, and then I drove out to Asheville and I showed up to the competition, and I was immediately blown away by the talent. I knew immediately that I felt immediately like I was out of my league, and I almost got back in my car and went home because my piece had broken in the car on the drive, and I didn't feel like I belonged there, but the Food Network was there, and they were filming, and so I just wanted to be a part of the event. So instead of going home, I spent 3.5 hours fixing it, and I entered it right before the deadline, and then the next day they did the judging, and then they did the award ceremony, and they called my name for the top 10, and I went up to this front table, and I was standing there with these 9 other people and all their crazy houses, and I was just excited to be there. It was really cool, and then they started announcing the top 3, and they announced my name for 3rd place, and I literally, there's a picture of me in the Asheville Times, and I was clapping my hands over my mouth and jumping up and down, and I know a gingerbread competition doesn't sound that crazy, but it really was. I mean, the Food Network was there. They interviewed me because I got into the top 3, so I ended up on this show called Gingerbread Giants 2, and when I got home, all the local news stations wanted to interview me, and I had all these awesome new friends that are called my Ginger Friends, and I just had this totally awesome 15 minutes of fame. And then a few months later, I got a call from the Food Network, and they asked me to come for a competition show that they were doing where I would battle other talented bakers and artists for a chance to win $25,000. And it was called Haunted Gingerbread Showdown, and I was on season 2, so it's on demand if you want to watch it. And as someone who can't really bake without a recipe, I immediately felt underqualified. I also felt excited. As I said, I'm a competitive person, so the idea to me was an intriguing one, if not a scary one. So, you know, the Food Network comes calling. You don't just turn down a chance to be on national television doing what you love to do. You do it. So I did. I built a 3-foot-tall gingerbread farm scene on a set with a bunch of cameras in my face. It had a barn and a UFO and a bunch of adorable little scared farm animals, and there were these little green aliens, and this farmer with a bunch of gingerbread tools, and he was hacking these little aliens to pieces, protecting his farm. And so again, I had 0 expectations. I just wanted to enjoy the experience as much as possible and enjoy being on TV. And the way that it worked was there were 2 rounds. In round 1, my brother-in-law, who was my assistant, and we went up against 2 other teams, and one team was 2 bakers who owned their own bakeries and had both won competitions on the Food Network before, and the other team was a woman who'd been working with gingerbread for 20 plus years, and we won. We beat them. And so I get to call myself a Food Network finalist for the rest of my life, and that only happened because I took a chance on myself. So spoiler alert, I did not win the finale episode. The theme was A Nightmare on Elm Street. There was fire involved, and we had an entire week for that one. It really took a toll on me. I got beat out by a friend of mine that I'd met at the gingerbread competition a few months prior, so she managed to beat out a team consisting of a pastry chef and a sculptor, and she's a 22-year-old scientist. So it was the most humbling, stressful, crazy long experience I've ever had in my life. I was away from my husband and kids for 16 days straight on set, being filmed. But I totally pushed my boundaries. I stepped out of my comfort zone, and I achieved something I didn't think was even possible. I still can't really bake without a recipe, and so, but I've won an episode of a Food Network show, and that's something that's really cool, all because I ignored the imposter feelings and took a chance on myself. And now I can watch myself on demand anytime I want, and my kids just loved watching me on TV. It was a really cool experience to be able to do that with them, and it's something I'll always look back on and I'll just have fun memories of. So, to recap, we stop making excuses. You are capable of more than you realize. And I went from making my first gingerbread house to being a top 3 national gingerbread winner and a Food Network finalist in a matter of 3 years. So if I can do that, you can do anything. And so we're going to go to our next step, which is step 3, manage your expectations. We want to set reasonable and realistic goals, both short and long term. So acknowledge your success when those goals are reached. Reward yourself. Recognize and record the steps that you took to reach those goals. It's easy to forget what you've accomplished when there's still so much to be done. So take the time to let your accomplishments sink in and bask in the glory of your wins, whether they're big or small. Step 4 is take incremental steps. Don't try to achieve all your goals at once. It's impossible. It'll make you feel defeated. It's just not possible. So plan ahead. Acknowledge your personal success before moving on to new goals, which we kind of talked about on the last step. I struggle with this a lot. I have a laundry list of things I want to accomplish, and I'm very disorganized in what I want to accomplish first, and so I get a lot of things done, but it doesn't feel to me like I've accomplished much when I look at the remaining list of things left that I have to do. So I started keeping a running list of things that I have done so I can remember the steps I've taken to get where I am. And that will make me push through and continue to be able to do the things that are on my list. Step 5 is reflect regularly. Take stock of your progress. Actively replace your negative thoughts with positive ones and focus on the good. And then remind yourself of the knowledge and experience that you've accumulated. I like to read a daily quote from my Positive Thinking Every Day book. So let's see. Let's pull a quote. How you think about a problem is more important than the problem itself. So always think positively. This is just something I like to do when I'm feeling down or in the first thing in the morning. I just pick up this book, and sometimes it makes all the difference when I start my day on a positive note or when I give myself some positive reinforcement after something negative has happened. So reflect regularly. Step 6, cut yourself some slack. Remember that you're human. Humans make mistakes. Remind yourself that it is okay not to know everything. You don't have to know everything to be an expert in the field. Acknowledge when you don't know something and seek education on the subject in order to learn so that you know it for the next time. There's always room to learn new things and to grow. And so always make sure that you're taking breaks mentally and physically, and just remember that you are your own worst enemy. Like, your brain is your own worst enemy. You have to constantly fight the feelings in order to allow yourself to recognize that you have accomplished things. So step 7 is share your experiences. We all know from the statistic back at the beginning of the presentation that an estimated 70% of people feel these imposter syndrome feelings at some point. So you aren't the only one that's struggling. You should share your concerns. People appreciate candor. It makes you relatable, and it makes them relate to you more. Like Garland said, well, one of the only reasons I'm even giving this presentation is because Garland actually liked one of my posts on LinkedIn, and it was a comic that I had put up about the struggles of entrepreneurship, which I am very open and very honest about because it has not all been rainbows and roses for me. He told me he liked my honesty and my openness about the struggles of being a solopreneur, and he thought it would resonate with others. So he invited me to do this, which, like I said, I had to get over a little bit of imposter syndrome to be able to talk to others about it. And just make sure that you're accepting help from others and giving help where you can. I have a few mentors that I speak to on a regular basis, and I mentor others when I can, those starting businesses. Most of my clients in my consulting business are starting their own businesses, so I am trying to be a mentor to them, even though sometimes I don't feel like I am the mentor type. Step 7, or step 8, which is our last step, is learn from your mistakes. Expect success, but accept your failures. Acknowledge that failures are learning experiences. Don't let the bad outweigh the good. Which brings me to another story. Last year, actually, I was feeling really good about my business. I felt like I needed some help, so I hired an employee. She was amazing. We got along great. She was really helpful, but it became very clear very quickly that I hadn't done my proper financial calculations and that some of the ideas that we had weren't catching on as quickly as I thought that they would. And so I ended up keeping her employed with me much longer than I should have, and I put myself and my family through a really big financial strain. And she knew what was going on. I was very open about it, and I eventually had to let her go in order to save my business. And it took me a few months to crawl out of that hole. I was very down about it. It was considered a failure, but afterwards I reevaluated and I streamlined my business and I refocused all of my efforts. And then I was able to make the business better. I was able to make some changes and recognize that I didn't really need the extra help. I just needed to stop saying yes to everything. And so failures are stepping stones. They help you learn as a person and they help you grow as a business owner. And if you ask any successful entrepreneur, I guarantee that they will tell you that they have had failures in the past. And so those were our 8 steps to overcoming imposter syndrome, but I do have some additional tips that I want to leave you with as well. Teach yourself to counteract your own negative thoughts. So fight back the urge to condemn yourself for things and really just try to look at them in a positive light. So my failures actually ended up being what I needed in order to have more success. Learn to think like a non-imposter. So focus on what you do best, focus on your strengths, and just learn to not feel like an imposter anymore. Just start to feel like someone who knows what they're doing and who is good at it. Accept and be thankful for constructive criticism. I am always appreciative of feedback, even if it doesn't feel good sometimes when it's not always positive feedback. It's still feedback that I can use to improve, and I would much rather hear it than not. Embrace positive feedback. I have struggled with this one quite a bit. I used to be really terrible at taking compliments. I think I got the trait from my mother. She is always so self-critical. She's a fantastic cook. Everything that she makes is amazing, but she's always pointing out her own flaws and apologizing to those that she's serving for it not being her best. And I'm always trying to boost her confidence and tell her to just accept a compliment because it's amazing. But I've actively worked on thanking those who compliment me and telling them how hard I worked on something. So if someone says, Grier, that's a fantastic gingerbread house, instead of me saying, oh yeah, but like here, I think I used too much icing and there's a crack and there's a flaw over here, I just try to make myself say, thank you. I worked really, really hard on it, which can be applied to business in many different ways. It makes me feel better to accept the compliment and thank someone for giving it, and that's what they want to hear. No one wants to give you a compliment so that they can then sit there and listen to you complain. It kind of makes them feel bad that they even gave you the compliment in the first place. So next is ask for help when you need it. You don't have to go it alone. Also something that I struggle with on a regular basis because I am a notorious DIYer, hence my blog. seek mentorship. I wouldn't have survived without it. And I enjoy being a mentor to others now because I know that if I hadn't had mentors, that I wouldn't still have my business and I'd be sitting behind a desk somewhere just thinking about my failures. Always continue to gain more experience. Experience is always going to make you feel better and more confident, so always continue to learn and gather as much information as possible. Challenge yourself. Find your Food Network experience and just go for it. Don't let doubt control your actions, because if you let doubt control your actions, then you'll never push your boundaries and accomplish things that you didn't know that you could accomplish. Seek out the tools and insight to talk yourself out of your cycle. Podcasts. I listened to a lot of podcasts when I first started my business. I still do. Books, articles, whether it's posting a motivational quote on your social media every Monday like I do, or reading a positive thinking every day quote. Give yourself the resources to stay positive and stay out of that negative cycle. My last slide that I have here for you is my get after it slide. Theodore Roosevelt once said, "Each time we face our fear, we gain strength, courage, and confidence in the doing." So if you need somewhere to start, I liked the podcast Every Day is Saturday. Listen to a few episodes of Sam Crowley speaking. It was one of the only things that kept me going in the beginning before I really had any mentors to talk to. It's very basic concepts, but it's extremely encouraging. He's very open about his struggles in the corporate world before he quit and became this motivational speaker that he is today. So if you need somebody to talk to, you can always reach out to me. I very much love having conversations with others. I work out of my basement, so I don't have a lot of interactions with humans a lot, just little toddlers, and so adult conversations are always welcome. I'll leave you with a recap of our steps, which was step 1, acknowledge your problem. Step 2, quit making excuses. Step 3, manage your expectations. Step 4, take incremental steps. Step 5, reflect regularly. Step 6, cut yourself some slack. Step 7, share your experiences with others. Step 8, learn from your mistakes, and that's it. Thank you all for having me. That was exciting. I think I talked really fast.
Grier, awesome. Thank you so much. You have no idea how well you just did.
Well, thank you.
I was literally typing Ed. I was like, she's killing it right now. This is phenomenal. We do have a few questions, and I have one personally. So I love how you shifted this conversation to the imposter syndrome. And look, I know people that can run 6-minute miles on a treadmill, but won't sign up for a 3, 4, 5K, right? I know that it took me probably 10 years to even have the fortitude to start my program. Some are more ambitious than others, but can you walk us through that first inkling? When you're sitting at home, you got your 2 little ones, or they're 2 years old and nothing years old, and you're like, how can I do this? You have no income, you're taking a total shot, and the imposter syndrome is climbing up your back. You're scared to death. How do I do this? Walk us through a little bit of what you did to overcome that kind of emotion, because we all have good ideas, but sometimes they never ever get out there because we kill ourselves before they even happen.
Yeah, everything you just said resonates a lot with me. I spent a decade with people telling me what to do. I started working in an industry that I had no interest in. I graduated with a degree in marketing from Virginia Tech, and I thought, oh, I'm going to go and I'm going to do cool, creative things, because I still at that time kind of felt like I was an artist, though I hadn't really stepped into my role in that yet. But it was a hard time finding a job, and when I finally did, it was working for a financial advisor as a client service associate, and it didn't pay much, it didn't require a college degree, but everybody around me kept saying, listen, it's just a job, just take it, make some money, start your career, and then you can always change your job. And I think that I just have the personality that is not being a quitter. And so once I started, even though I didn't love it, and even though I didn't think that it was what I wanted to do, I just kept doing it. And in some ways, I'm thankful that I did. I'm thankful that I stuck with it because it led me down a very unique path. I just happened to work for a bunch of advisors who initiated transitions in their business. So I was learning all of these things along the way, even though I wasn't loving what I was doing. But I was helping these advisors transition books of business. I was watching them start their own firms. I was doing all of these things that I now do for myself. And so I struggle to say, oh, just go for it and do what you want to do without the experience behind you. But if you have the experience and you know that you have knowledge that others don't, I mean, advisor transitions, most people only do 2 or 3 in an entire career. And by the time I started my business, I'd probably already helped with a dozen. And so I had an idea, and the catalyst was my children. I hadn't been sitting off to the side for a few years thinking about how I'm going to start my business and planning out all of my logo and my website and stuff. It was just one of those things where one day I just woke up and I said, I don't want to work for anybody else anymore. And so I literally just quit with no plan. And then I just started figuring it out. I said, okay, what am I best at? Well, I have all of this experience doing this for financial advisors, and not a lot of people are doing that. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. And I took the time to do all the research on what I needed. I wish I'd done a little bit more research on branding and everything, because after a few years, I had to rebrand myself, which is what I'm working on now. New website, new colors, all of that. So I would say, if you don't feel comfortable where you are and you know that you can be doing something better, then do it, because you and your brain know that you are capable of doing it. It's just you're scared, which is totally normal, and you are going to have some failures. It's just the way of life. But by giving yourself the chance, that's the only way you're ever going to know if you can do it. If you can't do it, okay, then you can't do it, but you still need to try. So just go ahead, take the leap, try to do it, and just make it work, and adjust along the way. You're never going to be ready. That's not a thing. You can't just sit doing your side gig or thinking about it forever, because there's never a time that you're going to feel ready. The hardest part of starting your own business is ripping out the safety net and just going for it. But from there, it just gets, yes, it's hard, but it's the greatest feeling in the world, because you're working for you and only you, and you get to make the decisions. And if something goes wrong, then you fix it, you adjust, and you move on. I think that answered your question.
That's awesome. I wish I had a career like 15 years ago. Actually, I got a question on my phone. Someone wasn't brave enough to put it in the real chat, but they asked about our industry, right? We know that we are in this financial industry. We know it's male dominated. I know from our experiences and having talks with you, but the question basically is, how did you overcome being a huge minority as a female in a very, very male-dominated industry that continues to be that way? And I'll add on to that, because not only are you not working for someone else, you're also marketing yourself as a helper to people that have been in this business for 25, 30, 35 years. Tell us about those experiences, because I know that people on this call, we've gone through some experiences where that is sometimes a hurdle we can't clear. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yep. Hurdles can always be cleared. First of all, I feel this in so many ways. I started out, I was a 22-year-old college graduate making, I'm not even going to tell you how much I was making, it's so embarrassing, working for a financial advisor, and it was really hard, because that's all I've ever known. I've only ever just followed instructions, sat on the phone, talked to clients, done things that were handed down to me from management. I did at some point leave the wirehouse world, and I was working for an RIA as the director of operations for a few years, but that title was not really indicative of what I was doing. I was a glorified client service associate. I sat at a reception desk and still did all of my client service associate roles. I was just given a title, which I think was part of the problem. I was given a title that made it seem like I had more responsibilities, but I didn't, in fact, have that many more responsibilities. And so I was struggling with this feeling of being given a higher role, but not actually being trusted to do a higher role. And so the only thing I can really say is that you presenting yourself as an equal automatically gives you more credibility. So if you're coming at it from me approaching a CEO and saying, oh, hi, I'm a client service associate for so-and-so, or I'm an assistant, you know, it doesn't matter whether they're trying to or not, they're going to treat you the way that you're presenting yourself. So if you approach someone and you say, hi, I'm the owner of this consulting business, and I am trying to educate myself on this, this, and this, or I'm trying to find partnerships for my business. If you are putting yourself out there and offering help to others, they're going to help you. So instead of you approaching a CEO as a brand new business owner and saying, oh, I'd really love it if we could talk about how you could refer clients to me. No, it's something more like, hey, we're both in the same industry. We have the same client base. I know that what you're doing is this and what I'm doing is this, and I'd really like to see if we could form a partnership so that we can refer business back and forth. If you're offering something to others, they're going to help you in your business. And if you're presenting yourself as one thing, you're going to be treated as that thing. So obviously the hardest thing is in the beginning when you are battling that imposter syndrome of, for the first time, calling yourself a business owner, calling yourself a CEO or a president, or saying that you're saying that you're a solopreneur. That's going to be tough. That's what these 8 steps are for, is getting you through and over that hump. But once you do, you're going to have no issue with it. Once you have presented yourself as that, once you start thinking that, once you start speaking that, then that's just what it is, and people will remember you for it, and they'll speak on that level with you. So you're the only one that can control your own narrative. So don't let others make you feel inferior. They can't make you feel inferior. You're the only one that can make you feel inferior. But if you speak to them with confidence, they're going to give back what you give.
Awesome. Do me a favor. Can you unshare your screen? And we're going to put your smiling face back on the main screen. There we go.
Oh.
Now we got your whole computer on there.
Yep. That's my Canva if anybody wants it. Did that work? Okay.
There we go. Now we're back. All right. So again, I want to thank you so much. I know Ed has some comments here, and Ed's in your backyard down in Eastern Carolina. Ed's also the ultimate entrepreneur. Ed's got his fingers in about 12 different things. I can't even keep pace with him. He's literally the guy who beat his imposter syndrome years ago, and he finally helped me beat it off my back. Ed, you got some comments, I know.
Yeah, definitely. First of all, Grier, thank you for joining us and talking about imposter syndrome. I first heard about imposter syndrome last year. And as I sat through the presentation, it blew me away. I was like, oh my God, I struggled with this like many, many years in corporate America. And believe it or not, Garland thinks I have it beat, but there's times when people are reaching out to me for certain things. I'm like, oh my God, why are you coming to me? I'm like, no, I don't want to do this. Like, someone just reached out to me to be a mentor for small business owners. I'm like, no, not me. I don't want to do this. But yeah, it is something that we definitely have to overcome. We are better than our minds at times allows us to believe. And I want to thank you for just overcoming yours. And for anyone else sitting out there, don't believe everything that your mind says as far as the negative stuff. You can do great things. That imposter syndrome is just what it is. It's an imposter. I love the acronym for fear, false evidence appearing real. And that's what imposter syndrome is. So, Grier, thank you for the amazing presentation. Keep doing great things out there. I love hearing what you're doing. And
Thank
by the
you.
way, I do want to see the gingerbread picture with the
Yes.
playing poker. I definitely want to see that.
Same.
Actually, I can probably bring it up while you guys are wrapping up. Let me see if I can.
Same.
Right.
Even if we can get on this call, I still want to see it after this call.
Okay.
Okay, it's 10:52. This has been a wonderful call. For everyone that joined us, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Just so you know, Grier used this platform to really overcome some things. We talked about that in the past. So for those of you that are out there that are thinking about, maybe ideas that you want to share with our group, this is collaborative. This is why We Are Connected to begin with. It's not just informative, but it's also a growth opportunity. And I've never heard Grier speak publicly before. She clearly is ready for the big stage. Killed it today. Absolutely killed it. So I'm not going to keep everyone. Continue to post in the chat. Please contact Grier's website. For those of you that are in the financial services area, Grier, I'm going to put you out there on blast. I think you're probably going to be a huge mentor to some people that need a little bit of a push to get their businesses started. And again, I cannot thank you enough. So on that note, 10:53, 7 minutes before the bell. Everyone have a great, great week. And please vote for your president by next Tuesday. Everyone take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'm putting up a photo.
Wow.
I love it. Oh my God, that's cool.
Oh my gosh.
It's all food.
See, things like that you really don't want to eat.
No, you do not want to eat it. Trust me.
That is so cool.
So yeah, all right, you guys have a great one. Take
Have a
care.
great one, guys. Thank you.